I've been painting landscapes for over 20 years now. I've sold dozens of paintings and I've helped hundreds of students to improve their artworks. And in my time painting landscapes, I see 5 common mistakes that beginner artists often make, and these mistakes often end up with them ruining their paintings. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you what these 5 mistakes are and how that you can avoid them so that you can create beautiful, balanced, natural looking paintings that you can be proud of. So my name's Samuel Earp and I'm a landscape artist, and we're going to go over these 5 common mistakes that I've seen many times through teaching my students. Now, the first mistake that I see most landscape artists making, in fact general realism artists, is that they don't do any planning at all before they start their paintings. They just get straight into a painting and then oftentimes end up running into trouble with it. And you know what, I used to do the exact same thing, the exact same problem. I just used to want to get straight into a painting, wasn't thinking about sketching or any kind of painting design. I just thought, oh, you know, who wants to do that? I just want to get into the painting. And whenever I did this, many of my paintings, I'd run into trouble with them. Either the compositions weren't working or the tonal arrangement just wasn't working. And there was many times where I'd just end up giving up on the painting altogether. And that's a very frustrating experience because you can end up spending a lot of time on something and then not get the results that you want with your painting. So how can we avoid this and be able to create repeatable results with our artworks? Well, it starts with the planning stage, and this means sketching. So what I normally do is I do either pencil sketches, or just recently I've been doing sketches with marker pens of different values, so different grey pens ranging from very dark, almost black, to very light. And what I do is create thumbnail sketches. So these are just quick 10-minute sketches just to get some composition ideas down on the paper. And they're very small as well. So perhaps when I do sketching on an A4 piece of paper, I'll get about 6 little sketches in there, and it's just getting some composition ideas down there quickly. Now, when I got back into painting 16 years ago, I never did this. I just got straight into the painting, and after 5 years of trial and error and trying to figure it out for myself, I got an art mentor that he asked me, "Are you doing any sketching at all?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, you got to start sketching because that's why your compositions look terrible." And I knew he was right. And ever since then, I started sketching. So starting off with thumbnail sketches, and then I'll do a master sketch. So this will be like the blueprint for my painting. Now, the sketching also serves loads of other benefits, as well as improving your drawing skills, which is going to transfer into your painting. But it also helps you to understand the tonal values in the landscape. So values are how light or dark your subject is, and it's going to give you a better understanding of that. Now, whenever I do a studio painting, I'll always design it first in my sketchbook. That's a non-negotiable, that has to be done. Then when you start your painting, you've got a clear plan of your overall design, the value arrangement as well, and it means you're much more likely to have a successful painting. Now, this leads on to mistake number 2, and that is not having an understanding of tonal values. So as I just said, tonal values are how light or dark your subject is. There's some general rules in landscape paintings. We'll find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground. Then as landforms recede, the darks aren't as dark and the lights aren't as light. So I think this is a really easy rule to remember, and we can start getting an understanding of the tonal values in the landscape just by sketching. So as I said, doing thumbnail sketches, perhaps using the value marker pens, the grey pens for example, to give you an idea of the lights and darks in the scene. And then when you do pencil sketching, you want to use a range of pencils, say from 4H to 8B for example, to get that tonal range. Now, in your paintings, you'll have a better understanding of where the lights and darks are. So a lot of artists are having trouble with colour mixing, which we'll talk about in a moment, but the tonal values in the landscape are the key to creating that depth and distance. Without this, you're just going to end up with flat looking paintings, and many artists that say to me they're struggling with colour mixing are often, without realising it, struggling with understanding tonal values as well. Now, believe it or not, I had this exact same problem. So for 5 years, when I got back into painting, which was in 2009, shortly before I moved to New Zealand, I was trying to see if I can figure it out for myself. In fact, I was even a bit arrogant, thinking, you know what, I don't need any help, I can just figure this out for myself. And I was trying it through trial and error, and I painted all these landscapes and seascapes that, in my opinion, didn't have any real strong depth because I just didn't understand how tonal values worked. And once I understood this, it made everything a lot easier. So there's some general rules in landscape painting, and this is simplified in John Carlson's book, Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting, which I'd recommend. But he simplified the landscapes into 4 main zones of value. So the arch of the sky are some of the lightest values. The ground planes of the grass are also pretty light in value. The slanting planes of the mountains are getting darker in value, and the upright planes of the trees are some of the darkest values in the landscape. And I think this is really easy to remember. So I always have this in mind when I'm painting, and when I'm painting, I'm always thinking about tonal values. If you get your tonal values correct, it doesn't matter so much if your colors aren't on point. You can still create the depth and distance with good painting tonality. So mistake number 3, and that's using overly saturated color in your paintings. I've seen this a lot with my students. It often coincides with just general beginner mistakes and not understanding tonal values either. So the key with color is we're more likely to find our most saturated colors in the foreground. This is also referred to as chroma. Then there are many colors that drop out as you go into the distance, i.e. they lose their intensity and become desaturated. This is especially the case with greens and yellows, and also reds as well. They tend to drop out as you go into the distance. So this is one of the mistakes that beginner artists are making, is they're using colors that are just too saturated, and this is partly because they don't know how to desaturate those colors. And there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can either mix its color opposite. So say, for example, if I wanted to desaturate a green, I could mix in a color that contains red, and that's just going to knock down the intensity of the green. And then also you could mix in white, and white will desaturate your color. However, it will also lighten the value of your color. So that's something that you need to keep in mind as well. So just having a basic knowledge of color theory and how colors work can really help with that. And it also coincides with tonal values as well. Now, a little tip for painting distant colors: use lower chroma colors such as yellow ochre, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and titanium white. You can mix a lot of colors in the landscape in the distance using these colors as well. Now, mistake number 4 that I see many artists make is you're just using too many colors on their palette, and what this results in is a disharmonious painting where there's no color harmony in it, there's no cohesion in the painting. So straight off the bat, we can achieve color harmony in the painting by using common colors throughout the painting. So basically, color harmony is where you'll look at a painting and it just looks nice, it looks pleasing, the colors look clean, and the viewer might not even know why this painting looks so nice, but it's often due to the color harmony. Now, many artists use too many colors, and I also I'm guilty of this as well in the past, where I was just using too many colors, and my paintings, the colors just look rough, they looked acidic, they didn't look natural, and just not a pleasing painting at all. And as I say, I've seen many students that have had the same problem. Often there's many artists that think that they can't mix the color that they want with fewer colors, that they've got to try and buy the exact color from the art store. And there are many colors out there as well, so this can make things a bit more confusing, but really half the colors that are for sale in art stores, I don't think you really need them. So I use a simple palette. There's literally 9 colors on my palette, and that includes titanium white as well. And one of those colors on there as well isn't really that necessary, I could eliminate it. But generally, when you use fewer colors, your painting is going to look much more harmonious, and you're more likely to use the colors that you do have on your palette throughout the painting. So that's going to connect everything in the scene that you're painting, resulting in nice color harmony in your paintings. Now, I've helped many artists to improve their color mixing in this way. I can remember one in particular. When she came to me, her colors just didn't look good at all. She was using too many, and with my instruction, she was able to correct that very quickly, and her paintings really massively improved and looked much more harmonious. Now, the final mistake I see many artists using is using brushes that are way too small for the size of the painting that you're doing, and they're getting bogged down in detail. This ends up basically having a painting that's just overwhelming and then just loads of detail, just too much detail. You're giving away too much information and it actually can end up just looking confusing on the eye. It makes the whole painting look stiff and unnatural, like there's a displeasing static in the whole painting. So this is what you don't want. So the thing to do here is to use the biggest brushes that you can get away with, at least when you start a painting. Don't get caught up in the detail at all. Use big brushes. I like using flat brushes, and I'll give you an example. On the day that I recorded this video, I started a painting this morning, doing a live painting class, and I was painting on an 11-inch by 14-inch linen canvas panel, and I was using number 10 bristle flat brushes. That's all I used for the painting when I started it. So when you block in a painting, use the biggest brushes that you can get away with. There's going to be no detail and you're going to get a nice looseness to your brushwork, which is going to create an aliveness in your painting. It's going to create mystique in it, and it's ultimately going to make your painting pop in the long run. It's going to have a nice vitality to it. Now then, once you've blocked in your painting, if you want to add detail, then you can do that and then work down to smaller brushes. I only use smaller brushes usually right at the end, and it will just be to add a few little details. It might be some sparkles on some water, for example, or perhaps some shimmering leaves on a tree. But you don't want to be painting from the get-go with tiny brushes. Apart from anything else, it will just mean that the painting will take ages and it will just be a nightmare. My recommendation here is use big brushes. Then once your painting's dry, then you can start using smaller brushes for detail. So then, those are my 5 beginner mistakes that I see artists making and how you can fix them. Just to recap, you should always start planning your paintings by doing pencil sketches and a final sketch. There's also lots of ways that you can do this as well. You don't have to use pencils. You could even do a sketch using an iPad and Procreate, for example, but just so long as you're doing some kind of planning for your painting. Then really one of the next key things is to understand tonal values, the lights and darks in the scene, because this is going to help you to create the depth and distance in your paintings. So try and avoid using colour that's really saturated where it's not appropriate to do so in the scene that you're painting, and also don't use too many colours on your palette. Try and simplify things. And then lastly, don't use small brushes, at least not to begin with. Start with big brushes and then work your way down to the smaller brushes for those last details. So then, if you're struggling with your painting, perhaps you're struggling with composition, creating depth and distance, struggling with colour mixing, then check out my free landscape painting blueprint ebook. It details my process, because it's good to have a process for your painting in general. So working through a system from start to finish. I show you that in my blueprint ebook, and it will give you a system that you can use for your own paintings. If you'd like to get this, just click the link below and I'll send it over to you. Now then, if you'd like to learn more about painting landscapes, then check out this video here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.